Westworld, where robot men and women are programmed to serve you for romance, violence, anything. Yeah, the classic dystopian sci-fi from 1973, Westworld, starring Yul Brynner, of course, Richard Benjamin and James Brolin. Oh, I love this film. And the reason why I'm talking about it today is because the series, or Westworld itself, has been rebooted into a television series that is now airing on HBO. I have yet to see the first episode. I'm hoping to do that tonight. I want to come in and talk about the original film, why it was so influential, the major sort of science fiction themes, stuff that we see all the time today in movies, but was really at the cutting edge when this film came out. The film, of course, was directed by Michael Crichton and created by Michael Crichton. He wrote it. Now, Michael Crichton, probably best known for the Jurassic Park, a film series that really borrowed massively from Westworld. I would have to say I would choose Westworld any day over any of the Jurassic Park movies. And I would only think that the first Jurassic Park is the only one really worth watching. But Westworld itself has so many things working for it, and it's still so important today. So I want to talk about the film, what it's about, the major themes involved, why it's still relevant, what they did well with it. And there's really not too many critiques that I can lay on this film because they succeed on almost everything with this film. So, film came out in 1973. I think it was pretty moderately successful. I really don't know how. I mean, it wasn't a massive, blockbuster, but blockbusters really didn't exist until Jaws came out, and I think that was a few years after that. So, but still did pretty well. Yul Brynner, of course, was the big star. James Brolin, Richard Benjamin, great cast. Okay, so what happens is you have this futuristic sort of resort that you can go to. The wealthiest people can go. It cost $1,000 a day in 1973 money, which would be $5,000 or something today, or something like that. So very expensive, an elitist sort of resort. At the resort, and it's called Delos. So Delos, coming from the Greek myths, the birthplace of Apollo and Artemis, I believe. One of the most culturally significant, especially when it comes to Greek mythology. Delos is one of the most important islands in all the Greek Isles, sort of thing. So there's a lot of symbolism involved with that. Now, you have a choice. It's not just Westworld. So you're going to Delos. You have a choice of 3 different destinations. There is Westworld, there's Roman world, and there's medieval world. So Westworld is where you can go to be a gunslinger. You can live out your fantasies. And you're set in this world, so it's like they've recreated a whole Western town, and it's staffed with robots. So the robots are the innkeepers or the saloon bartenders, the other gunslingers that you can pick fights with, sexual servants, whores in the whorehouse sort of thing. They're almost perfect robots that you can't really tell any difference from an ordinary human being unless you look at their hands. And on their hands, that's one of the ways that it's one of the great things that they do in this film. They don't try to fake or actually create robots. They use actual human actors like Yul Brynner, who's fantastic in this. In fact, you'll never think of Yul Brynner the same once you see him, because he is basically recreating the exact same character that he had in The Magnificent Seven, which is the classic Western, of course, that was a remake of one of my favorite films of all time, which was The Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. Now, Yul Brynner in the film Magnificent Seven was the leader. He was the alpha male. He was the gunslinger, the good guy who decides to go and help a small town against bandits, this massive roving band of bandits that were stealing all their food and all their supplies and sort of thing. So he actually, in this film, his character is dressed identical. So the all in black sort of character. So he looks identical to the character Chris that he actually played in the film Magnificent Seven. But of course, in this, he's a cold-hearted machine. And he does a phenomenal job. Yul Brynner is the best thing in this film. The other great thing are the 2 leads here, James Brolin and Richard Benjamin. Now, Richard Benjamin is more or less James Brolin put it better. James Brolin here is kind of the alpha male, and he's been to Delos before. He's been to Westworld, so he knows the ropes, and he's bringing his friend. I think he's an accountant, so he's really this totally fish out of water character, and it's his character that has the arc here in the film. So he's kind of the main character, but there's a great camaraderie between the two of these characters, and the first half of the film is rather almost lighthearted because you're set in the Western world. They're living in the fantasy, so the Richard Benjamin character is getting used to, like, oh my god, I don't have any of the modern facilities. I have to go use the communal washroom. All these things. It's like, and then of course you go to the bar, the saloon. They're drinking the whiskey, and it's like really, harsh and all that. So he's like way out of his element. And his buddy here is like, he's like, all sure of himself and all that. So, great casting. The two leads here are fantastic. And then right away, they almost pick a fight instantly with Yul Brynner, and the Richard Benjamin character actually ends up killing Yul Brynner. Now, his name is Peter, Richard Benjamin's character, and he actually kills. They end up killing Yul Brynner several times. Of course, he doesn't really die because he's a robot. So all that happens is you have a Wild West setting where everything's authentic, everything looks like the Wild West. In fact, the set itself was so well done that they used it for Blazing Saddles as well. So it's a great, like, the first half of the film, you have that feeling like, wow, wouldn't this be fun? Especially if you're like me and you're a huge fan of like all the spaghetti western, The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, all the classic Sergio Leone westerns. You'll love this right away because it's paying homage to all of those great classics, but at the same time, it throws a total curveball at you by making it about robots who malfunction. And this is the theme that you see over and over again, where our tech, somehow at some point turns against us. Of course, the Terminator series is probably the best known. But Jurassic Park, so many movies are based on this formula, and Westworld was really ahead of its time in so many ways doing this. They had a tremendous set, like just the robotics themselves and the whole sort of control booth and the practical effects that they use were fantastic. They hold up so well, even today. So you have the different worlds, right? And I'll just show you a bit of the control booth here, which kind of looks like Star Trek sort of, slash whatever. But you have this massive 3 different area themed resorts, and they're kind of separated by deserts, so they're not completely far away from each other, but they're in their own area sort of thing. And you have this massive staff of mechanical engineers and scientists, and they're monitoring everything that the robots are doing, making sure that the robots don't malfunction, because they malfunction often. So they have to, if a robot malfunctions, they have to go in, pick it up. Usually they cart it off in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep, sort of thing, so they don't bust the illusion of living in the fantasy of that time. So that theme, of course, just over and over again. So you have your robots that are sexual, right? That are there for sexual pleasure, and you have your robots that are there for your gunslinging sort of adventures. And it's not the only characters in this, because they do give you slices. Like they'll show you Roman world, which is all about sexual satisfaction and debauchery and all that sort of Caligula type lifestyle. And then you have medieval world, which is kind of similar, but of course set in a sort of King Arthurian sort of setting. And so you have this character here who is one of the other characters that they show in one of the other worlds, and he's trying to get it on. He reluctantly, because he's overweight and stuff, and not in good shape, and a very beta male type character, but yet wealthy. And he has to reluctantly get in a sword fight with another knight, of course, which is a robot, and he's trying to win the affections of a princess. And the princess rejects his sort of advances, and so then you have the tech room coming in saying, "Oh, we gotta fix that robot. We can't have this guy unsatisfied." So of course everything goes wrong, and that's usually the theme of these sort of dystopian science fictions, is that you make all this tech for it to work, and it doesn't work. At some point, it just breaks down. So you have all these scenes, which are really cool. Some of the coolest scenes about Westworld, and it shows you the amount of production that they put into it, are the robots that are, like, and they have such a huge staff, so they have all these scenes where they're going into behind the scenes showing you how the robots are being programmed, how they're being malfunctioned, how that the things that they do wrong, they have to go in there, they have to get into their circuitry and reprogram them and all that. So it's really, really cool. Here's another example here, the practical effects. Well before the CGI era, this is why these films hold up so well, because they relied on practical effects. Here's a scene too of them arriving in a hovercraft. So like everything about it has that modern feel, but it's, if you've seen Logan's Run or you've seen some of the other classic 70s science fictions. Another one I can think of is Rollerball. Really great films. I'm going to be doing more on these films in the future because I think there's a lot there. But you really have almost a perfect little sci-fi thriller here that I think has been so influential over the years. So we're going to talk about some of the things that have come out of Westworld, some of the influences that Westworld. So talking about the ultimate sort of bad guy, Yul Brynner, the character here of the black sort of gunslinger, or the black clad sort of gunslinger, you have to right away think of the Terminator. And there's no doubt whatsoever that the Terminator was based on Yul Brynner's character. Also, another character that was directly, that the creator, John Carpenter, of course, of the classic film Halloween, was directly influenced by Westworld. In fact, he based the character of Michael Myers on Yul Brynner's character here, the gunslinger in Westworld. So you can see right away the influence. Now, there's amazing scenes in this film that still hold up really well, where you have a point of view of the robot as he's tracking down. Once they malfunction and they revolt and they start killing people, you have this gunslinger, of course, which is like the Terminator. Nobody can stop him, right? And he's killing people left, right, and center. And he's going after the Richard Benjamin character. That's the one that he is, somehow got in his mechanical mind that he has to eliminate, sort of thing. So very, very much like Michael Myers, very, very much like the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. And you couldn't have picked a better actor than Yul Brynner to pull this off. Yul Brynner should have got an Academy Award for this. He was amazing as this. Okay, so there's a lot of different things in the film that are really cool. So I mentioned Terminator, I mentioned Halloween. When you see from his point of view, this computer digitized sort of images that they show were the first time that they ever did something like this, and they still hold up really well. So you're seeing all this pixelated sort of views and like a infrared and shit like that. And that took them a lot of time. It took them like 8 hours to make like 10 seconds worth of footage, sort of thing. So in many ways, this film is way ahead of its time. As you see here, I just click on this image. Delos! This is like the advertisement where you have the guy here, the vacation of the future today. You could think about, when you hear that and you see the commercial, you'll probably think, if you've seen the original Total Recall, very, very similar sort of thing. So yeah, great film. So Michael Crichton was actually influenced for this film by when he went to Disneyland. So he went to Disneyland and he went on the Pirates of the Caribbean. So this is long before the movies came out, sort of thing. They had a Pirates of the Caribbean sort of themed ride. And the theme ride had these animatronic sort of figures. So they're robotic sort of figures as you go in, sort of thing. I really don't know. I've never seen it myself. But he thought about that and he was like, what if these robotics, these animatronic sort of robotic characters were actually to revolt and go, turn against humanity, start killing humanity instead of serving humanity. And that's the theme. And you've seen this theme over and over and over again through the years, but very few films have ever done it as well as Westworld, or has been as influential as Westworld. Just everything they seem to nail with this film. I absolutely adore it. So yeah, he was influenced by this. And of course, this theme is almost the identical theme to his blockbuster hit, which was Jurassic Park. Of course, most people associate Steven Spielberg with Jurassic Park, but it was Michael Crichton who wrote Jurassic Park. And he also wrote the Andromeda Strain. He's one of the big guys when it comes to movies and sci-fi for, the last few decades, sort of thing. So yeah, really, really, really interesting, the influence that this original film had on so many sci-fi classics that have come out since. And I really think, in many ways, Westworld from 1973 is one of the most underrated sci-fi classics that is out there. There are some dated things, there are some hammy things, there are some things that you may not, you might say, well, that looks kind of like 1970s sort of thing. But overall, very, very impressive, and you cannot underestimate the charisma and power of Yul Brynner, one of my favorite, of course, Western type actors, and he is just deadly in this. He is so awesome. So, and I think it was one of Yul Brynner's last films, if I'm not mistaken. Yul Brynner died of lung cancer in the late 70s, mid or late 70s. So don't smoke, right? So yeah, the film has a lot of great, great things about it that I would highly recommend watching this before you watch the show, because then you'll get an idea of where it came from. Also, I talked about the other films or series that were influenced by this, including Terminator, of course, and Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. But also, did you know that the Westworld was also the basis for Itchy and Scratchy Land? I think I remember seeing this way back when. I don't know if it was in the 90s or something, but Itchy and Scratchy Land had it was totally based on Westworld, where you had these theme parks staffed with robots, and the robots go crazy and start killing everyone. And that's exactly what happens in the film. So, yeah, really excellent, excellent film. Total underrated classic. One of my favorite sci-fi movies from the 1970s. Well ahead of its time in so many ways. Just, they really nailed this film. So I'm very excited to see the show itself, to see how it holds up, to see what they've changed. Obviously, they're going to make it set in a contemporary world, or with the contemporary sort of concerns about technology. A lot of things have changed, but a lot of things stay the same. So I think there's a lot of this film was able to anticipate a lot of things. And one of the things I didn't mention either too yet is the idea of computer viruses. I could be wrong, but I think this might be the very first film that talks, or that actually has a computer virus theme. And that's the whole thing, that's for some reason a virus gets into the computers, and this is what the control room is saying. There's something, they're malfunctioning, there's something getting into their circuitry that is programming them to turn against humans and kill humans. So really, really cool that that this film was so ahead of its time. So I highly recommend this film. I can't say enough about it. It's one of my favorite, from the 70s, the sci-fis. One of my favorite sci-fis, period. And I'm very excited to see the new show, to see how well. As you see, look at the practical effects and how good they were for their time. I mean, that's just amazing. Even today, they wouldn't be able to do it quite as well. And these rooms here, where they're putting all the robots, or taking them apart, putting them back together, it's just such a cool idea, and it's so well done. So top marks to Westworld. I highly recommend this film. Definitely try to catch it before you watch the show, or at least try to watch it if you haven't seen it yet. It's pretty accessible, and it's an absolute classic. Thanks so much for listening. If you know more about the film, please let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're subbed to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, especially if you enjoy the film Westworld. What are your other favorite sci-fi classics from that era, 1970s? There's so many great ones. I'm going to be talking about more of them. I mentioned a couple, Logan's Run, of course, Rollerball. There's some really excellent ones that are actually today are still extremely relevant, if not more relevant than they were when they came out, because they cover these themes that are universal. The theme about our tech being our undoing is one of the most universal themes about science fiction that has been used over and over again. Forbidden Planet, like classic sci-fi movies. So I'm a huge fan of older sci-fi movies, and I really appreciate all the care and craft that went into creating this film. 1973, Westworld, decades ahead of its time. Thanks for listening.